Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for coming. Today, the 4th of June 2019, I have the honor to welcome you on the International Forum on STS 2019, sponsored by Tsakos Group. Last weekend, when I started to prepare the welcome speech, I thought that it was a good idea to review the history of this event. I looked back to see how it started, and I tried to account for our achievements, if any. It all started back in 2012. At that time, Alexandros and I had already realized the exposure of tanker operators, and we have just formed the final core of the online STS.net concept. However, the problem was the following. All right, we know that there is a gap, and we also know how to overcome this gap. But how is it possible to get followers to a solution to a problem that people do not even realize it exists in the first place? Yes, we will inform them, but we will be considered prejudiced as we were also trying to sell the solution. In such a competitive market, like the tanker market, this would be definitely the first reaction of most of our potential clients. What we, as well as tanker owners, needed was a kind of endorsement from other parties of the industry, like lawyers, insurers, charterers, mariners, organizations, flags, classification societies. We needed them to agree that, indeed, there is a gap and that something has to be done. So the idea was as following. Let's bring them all together and let's talk. Let us have a dialogue and let the industry guide us. The industry does not respond. If the industry does not respond to our call, maybe, just maybe, the entire issue was in our minds. Dynamarine needed proof too that also other people, that also other experts share these considerations. This was how it started. And since then, almost once a year, we meet, we discuss, and we get improved. For 7 years now, it is amazing. Today, the scope of IFSTS is clearer than ever. Tanker operators invite the entire industry to discuss risk and safety in STS operations. It is worth focusing on some specific qualities that, according to my opinion, make this forum unique. Number one is the fact that safety, the only topic of this forum, is a common interest for the entire STS business. No stakeholder will have any benefit from an accident. And it goes beyond this, because any accidents anywhere in the world will negatively affect the reputation of STS worldwide. If something happens in China today, tomorrow STS operation in SCO may be ceased. Bad for the charterers, bad for the owners, bad for the economy in general. The second important quality is that this forum is organized by tanker owners, the stakeholders that are accountable for safeguarding safety. It is of great importance that since tanker owners are not commercially involved, there is no conflict of interest at all. Conceptually, it is an ideal situation. And to add a little more credibility, this forum is the only one that invites all stakeholders internationally, and to emphasize even more on this, unconditionally. It was only last month that we were allowed to attend ITOL for the first time, and the MEA not only keep refusing our attendance, but also bans everybody who is participating in IFSTS. I wonder what kind of safety meetings are these anyway without transparency. So everybody, come and express your point of view and your concerns. Ask, talk. IFSTS is not only the place to get answers to your questions, it is also the place to raise questions about current practices. Finally, and this is equally important, we have decided that in this forum we should only and strictly discuss safety. Although Dynamarine is organizing this, We are not trying to sell services through IFSTS, and we are not trying to build any monopoly. We organize this forum in order for all of us, you and us, to discuss and define the needs rather to offer specific services. It is about setting up the specs. Once the needs are clear, Dynamarine, like any other consultant, will develop services and offer them in their market. We believe in competition, and we like to take challenges. This is IFSTS. This is IFSTS, and it will continue to be like this in the future. Thanks to your participation, and thanks to our sponsors and supporters. I think this is the right time to give our thanks to Tsakos Group and other sponsors who cover most of the cost of this event. I would also thank the Greek Ministry of Shipping, Helmepa, Green Award, and Singapore Nautical Institute, who give credibility to this forum. Each time we organize a forum, we have a main issue to discuss. In the beginning, the issues that kept us busy were about liabilities of tanker owners, the STS regulation of IMO, and the latest OCMF guidelines. As the time passes, the focus has passed to the third-party exposure of tanker owners, namely the STS superintendents and the STS service providers. Especially as new STS locations arise and new local STS service providers appear, a very difficult dilemma arises more and more frequently. As far as safety is concerned, what is the value for tanker operators if STS service providers have a consistent safety management system? Is it only paperwork, or has it a direct and countable effect in the risk of the operation? Just before the end of last year, we had a case where we had the opportunity to audit an STS service provider who emphasized this issue in the most intense way. On the one hand, we evidenced new and good quality equipment, experienced and qualified STS superintendents, and personnel with high safety culture. On the other hand, the shore part of the company was almost one-man show without any documented management system in place. And the question arises, is this situation go or no go? On what basis we can justify an answer to this question? This is the topic of the first session of today's forum, and I'm looking forward to attending the discussion. In the next sessions, we will have equally interesting topics. We will talk about STS training on the simulator. We will review some new STS locations, and we will be informed about STS hoses and mooring lines. This is the second year that Yokohama has honored us with its presence and support. And finally, case study and lessons learned. Well, enough with introductions. Let me give the floor to our sponsors and supporters for a short welcome. I want to call Mr. Glikis, Captain Glikis, who is the operational marine manager of Tsakos Group, to make a welcome speech.
So, my name is Captain Yannis Glikis, Operational Marine Manager of Tsakos Columbia, and I would like to welcome you all on behalf of Tsakos Group, the leading sponsor of this forum. I am very proud to welcome so many highly distinguished guests from the industry whose contribution would definitely promote the scope and aims of this forum. As an experienced master, DP Unlimited certified, with more than 100 dynamic position offloading operations at Campos Basin, Espírito Santos, and many more areas, all in Brazil, I would certainly say that a ship-to-ship operation remains the most dangerous of all cargo operations. Ship-to-ship operations nowadays are carried out more often than ever in open sea, underway, at anchor, and even alongside berths with the known double backing operations. Over the last 5 years, the Tsakos group of companies conduct an average of 150 ship-to-ship operations per year, all successfully and safely, delivering the cargoes with the highest of standards and mitigating the risks, resulting in zero pollution and zero accidents. On behalf of Tsakos Group of Companies, we wish to congratulate once again Dyna Marine for helping us achieving this great goal, for promoting safety, quality standards, and best practice, not only in conducting ship-to-ship operations, but also by focusing into the human element in a continuous changing industry, adapting and evolving, leading the way, and setting the example for others. The Tsakos Group is associated with Dyna Marine for a number of years, supporting their efforts in developing procedures and sharing knowledge and experience. Last year, we were discussing about the new service that Dyna Marine had developed for auditing the ship-to-ship service providers on behalf of tanker operators. We are very proud to be associated with Dyna Marine in jointly providing training at Maria Tsakos Training Academy to ship-to-ship providers from a number of countries with the use of the latest state-of-the-art simulators, thus promoting best practices and being the company of choice in ship-to-ship operations. We are sure that once again we will have a pleasant journey in this forum, enriching our knowledge, our skills, and experience in ship-to-ship operations, as well as to learn new things. The venue of the forum is one of the best in Athens, and I invite our foreign guests to take the opportunity of a pleasant walk through the nearby gardens. With this happy thought, I declare the opening of the 7th International Forum on S2S operations. Thank you very much, and have a pleasant time.
Thank you, Captain Likis. Okay, now let me introduce you to the chairman of the Green Award Foundation, Mr. Mattheou, also CEO of Arcadia Ship Management. Green Award is an organization with a very strong concept towards quality and safety in the shipping industry. We fully support Green Award mission by being incentive provider. Mr. Mattheou, the floor is yours.
Καλή σας μέρα. Distinguished guests, forum speakers, ladies and gentlemen. I am very pleased with my presence here today on the occasion of the International Forum of Ship-to-Ship, commonly known as IFSTS 2019, a safety-oriented forum that aims to bring the industry together and talk through the major safety issues regarding ship-to-ship transfer operations, as well as quality standards STS operations. I am very confident that all participants will gain valuable knowledge, conscious awareness, and will be motivated to deliver innovative ideas towards ensuring safety, environmental protection, and especially to work on best practices. As you all know, I represent here today both of my executive roles, my role of the CEO of Arcadia Ship Management and Aegean Bulk, and the chairman of the Green Award Foundation. Therefore, allow me to have an overall view of Dyna Marine's dynamic corporate profile and high-quality performance. Dyna Marine's initiative to organize successful STS forums since 2011 testifies above all the company's commitment to safety and environmental protection during STS operations. This commitment is being implemented in a professional and thorough manner while providing valuable support, know-how, and a high level of service at the same time. Furthermore, the growing number of operations undertaken by IFSTS worldwide have a positive impact on tanker operations who benefit greatly from this particular initiative and the ones who follow. As the chairman of the Green Award Foundation, I must confess that I am very pleased with the fact that Dynamarine is one of the incentive providers that have joined the Global Green Award scheme, for which we are very proud of. I can assure you that STS operation safety standards and the preparation of their vessels and crews to carry out successful and incident-free operations are extremely high and comply fully with the standards and criteria of the Green Award. The Green Award Foundation is a dynamic supporter of this forum due to the fact that STS operations involve a high degree of risk for the stakeholders, the assets, and the environment. The risk factor is twofold as compared with the load operation of a vessel in any terminal wherein there is only one vessel, the weather conditions are more favorable and the terminal staff most experienced. The volume of seaborne trade from 10.5 billion tons in 2017 is expected to increase somewhere between 19 and 24 million tons by 2030. As STS operations play an important role in global cargo transport, mainly due to additional flexibility that STS operations bring to charterers, it is easy to predict that we should be prepared for an enormous increase in such activities. Having all this in mind, I would like to share some ideas that hopefully will raise everyone's concern. The world is changing, and sailors are the first to feel the winds of change. Environment is and will remain for the years to follow our crucial vision that will cause transformations and transitions of great significance. But first step is to know where we are today so that we can take the right path to get where we want to go. Climate change is a natural occurrence. Scientific, holistic research has encouraged through studies a better understanding of climate change by arguing that climate change involves political, social, and environmental dilemmas, and that these dilemmas need to be considered simultaneously to avoid an imminent disaster. In shipping, reducing greenhouse gas emissions from fuels used in maritime transport is an international challenge and is a major concern for many stakeholders within the industry. But climate change is not just about carbon dioxide levels and melting polar ice. It is about our public health, the protection of mankind and of our planet. The decisions taken today will determine the environmental future performance, and current actions will bring our signature for the future of the next generations. I strongly believe that enhancing environmental awareness requires a bright and optimistic vision that will lead to dynamic actions. The only problem is that we have stuck our minds on environmental legislation and how to manage it. Of course, we need laws and regulations to guide our course, but let me say that we ourselves are responsible, and it should become our mission to foster environmental awareness, environmental protection, and excellence. I always prefer conscious and not imposed actions. The former have a long duration, the latter have a short end. I am a huge fan of the concept of environmental excellence. Environmental excellence is based on the excellent environmental achievement of companies, organizations, communities, and people who have exceeded the required environmental legislation. Green Award as a quality mark promotes, serves, and literally puts environmental excellence into practice. Specifically, as an independent and international quality assessment certification scheme, inspects and certifies ships that go above and beyond the industry standards in terms of safety, quality, and environmental performance. As a foundation, it has a worldwide presence in 30 countries, Europe, Asia, Africa, Australia, and South and North America, and has been bringing benefits to its holders and contributing globally to sustainable waterborne transport. Until today, 900 ships have been certified inland and sea, and over 120 incentive providers, which include ports and maritime service providers, participate in the green scheme. It is of great significance to mention the fact that the Green Award boards consist of members representing the international maritime industry, including both public and private interests, and therefore we all substantially contribute greatly with our knowledge and experience in ensuring the international standards and regulations governing shipping by moving in a parallel track with a common scope to cultivate genuine innovation, environmental awareness, and the concept of quality excellence worldwide. Environmental excellence is not a quick solution. It is a long-term commitment. And if there is no involvement, there will be no commitment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Matteo. Let me now introduce you to the General Director of Helmepa, Mr. Mitsatsos, Dimitrios Mitsatsos. Helmepa is the first organization who we are part of it. We support fully these missions, and we assist Helmepa with all our power. Mr. Mitsatsos.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm afraid I am too happy today to have very good words to say only for Dyna Marine, simply because Helmepa, the Hellenic Marine Environment Protection Association, completes today 37 years of existence. I'm very happy also because Tsakos, Captain Panagiotis, the owner of Tsakos Group, Captain Glikis here, is one of the founders of Helmepa on June 4th of 1982. Also, Green Award is one of our members. Dyna Marine is a very dynamic organization which is also a member of ours and a good supporter. And of course, all of you here are caring for the environment, because previous speakers spoke about the importance of, let's say, preserving the environment, as we are all depending on it. I want to congratulate Dyna Marine for taking the initiative, which was too risky business-wise, even though I represent a non-profit making organization. But I worked only for 37 years for this organization. Prior to that, I was working for profit-making organizations like shipbuilders. I want to congratulate you, Mr. Glikas, Dr. Glikas, and Dr. Perisakis for taking the risk to become somewhat the leaders in these STS transfers, and all the efforts you have been making all these years to convince tanker owners and other organizations and entities the world over about the importance of this very risky operation. I am amazed by the fact that when I saw the fenders outside, by the fact that a captain of a tanker, this huge big thing, is trying to approach another tanker which is afloat. And I say so because I happen to be a graduate of the Naval Academy of this country, and I have commanded warships. But warships are very, very, very small. Speaking about a tanker, and actually the big size of them, well, it's hair-raising. So congratulations for all of you who are dealing with this kind of business. Now, speaking about the Hellenic Marine Environment Protection Association, its anniversary today, I would like to bring to yourselves your attention, to bring your attention to the fact that all these operations, STS and so many others, are dependent on the ability, the nerve, the diligence, the skills, the professional skills of the seafarers. So HELMEPA was established in 1982 by the late Greek-American ship owner, George Levanos, and another 26 Greek ship owners who believed in what he was preaching, together with the Pan-Hellenic Seamen's Federation representing all the seafarers of this country. The idea was to bring the importance of the human element forward, to go to IMO and tell all these excellent representatives of so many beautiful countries there that it is not regulations alone that can save the planet. It is Captain Glikis, for instance, pardon me for using you, sir, but I know you for years, so I can take this liberty, to be able to command a ship, not only from the technical point of view, but also having in mind that any mistake that he may make will eventually go back to Chios. You're coming from Chios, aren't you? No. No? Well, amazing. Captain Panagiotis. Sorry?
I am from the Ionian Sea.
Oh, well, Ionian. Well, anyway, that's another, thing that Captain Tsakos is unique for. But it's not from Chios. So these people who command ships and man ships have to be given respect and, of course, refresher training, and also to have some pride in what they're doing. And that was exactly what Levanos had in mind. And 37 years ago, we went out without promoting any people's interests, nothing to do with money, no profit, but it is for our members to become, let's say, supporters of this idea, and also help us continue with refresher training that we're offering to seafarers, and also simulator courses, and many other things that we think that are important to refresh the memory of those who man ships. Now, the people that are members of ours, and we're talking about 14,000 Greek seafarers, and also some foreign seafarers, actually, let's say, the critical mass of what HELMEPA is doing, together with very many children in this country and schools and elsewhere in other countries as well, because we believe that synergy is one of the means through which people get together, understand exactly what is the real dimension of pollution, what is their role in creating it, and of course trying to get along with some kind of new ideas as to how to preserve the environment. So I wish you a wonderful time in this town. We're a little bit peculiar here in Greece because, you see, we had elections last Sunday, but the municipalities, now are, remedying the roads. That is why the traffic conditions today were very bad. Normally they would do that before the election so they can get some votes. But we do things opposite in this country. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, if you wish to somehow help HELMEPA's, efforts, and you come from various countries of the world, I would like to tell you that there are other organizations that we have helped set up in other countries. That is in Australia, OSMEPA, in Cyprus, IMEPA, in Turkey, TURMEPA, in Uruguay, URUMEPA, in Ukraine, UKRMEPA, and in the United States, now MEPA. And there are some others that are on the making. So if you come from these countries or you have some kind of affiliation with these countries, business-wise, it would be good if you gave the support to this MEPA philosophy, which is, let's save the seas from our own pollution. Thank you so much. Good idea.
Thank you, Mr. Mitsatsos. Before we start the first session, I would like, on behalf of the entire Dynamarine, of Alexandros Glikas, George Papaioannou, and myself, to thank all the staff of Dynamarine, which consists mainly from enthusiastic young people. We also have 3 new young people last month acquired. Yesterday, the last one. Yes, so, but I know that Alexandros wants also to welcome you and thanks our staff. So I will call Alexandros to take the floor. But before this, I want also to thank George Pagoniadis for today's setup and Marine Tours for assisting the organization of this event. So, Alexandros, come. Have the floor.
Just 1 minute. Lessons learned. Last week we were all worried about the weather, but the lessons learned is that you have to worry about the roads. So currently we are missing about probably 1/3 of the people, but they keep coming. So that's the lesson learned for next year. But probably next year we are going to be in Brazil, Singapore, somewhere there. We have made a promise to our Brazilian friends in the government there and Petrobras. So it's one of candidate destinations for the next IFSTS, but we'll see about that. My special thanks to all our supporters. I would like to especially thank the Singapore Nautical Institute, who supports this event for the second year. Mr. Tsakos, you have inspired me for many years now because you have dedicated your life in what you are doing. And this is my personal lessons learned. And this is the key success for Dynamarine because we started from an idea back in 2011. We believed in this idea. And the idea is that ship owners should have total control over safety aspects in STS operations. And this is what we are trying to do. So currently, I don't believe that you should think if you would be part of HELMEPA, you should think why you are not part of HELMEPA as yet. These organizations, all the MEPA organizations, they honor very small ideas. However, these principles and these ideas are very fundamental for our seafarers who are there, they are in the front end, who take care of our interests, of our assets, and we have to honor them. We have to support them with simple means, and this is the way that I believe your work is very significant for. Last but not least, with my turn, I would like to thank our crew in Dynamarine. I feel very honored dealing with my staff. I'm really proud of them. I feel they are like my children, but okay, there's not so much difference. I'm just proud. I'm proud of what we have achieved until now, and this is thanks to you, thanks to our supporters, and thanks to the very strong work of all our crew in Dynamarine, who is there 24/7 to support our clientele. So let's enjoy it today. Let's extract some lessons learned for the industry, and eventually let's make sure that these lessons learned will end up and reach our seafarers. Thank you very much for being here, and thank you very much for supporting this event.
Thank you, Alexandros. Okay. Before the end, I want to name one by one our staff. So thank you, Vasilis, Petros, Argyris, Dimitris, and Nick for being in the front line of the online STS.net service. Thank you, Yanni, Vicky, and George for supporting and developing our system. Thank you, Angelos, for your support in multiple projects. Thank you, Penny, for having all these plans timely ready for delivery and for keeping our quality system on track. Thank you, Angeliki, for administration. Thank you, Katerina, for making our deliverables look nice. And Nikos, Antonis, Marios, welcome to our family. So, let's start. I have to say that we use Slido in this forum. Slido, you can go in your mobile phone, www.slido.com, and then the code is IFSTS 2019. Please, you can make your questions there, and then we will answer from the panel. Additionally, in this Slido, we have also the feedback form. Please fill the feedback form whenever you wish. but we need your feedback in order to organize next event even better. And there is also one question, very interesting question there. Not one, two questions there. The one is, what topics are you waiting for the next forum? And in which place, in which location you want to see the next IFSTS forum? So, let's start with the first session. The panel of the first session, please come. The chairman of the first session is Captain Andrei Moisev. We know Captain Andrei a long year now. He was also in the last forum. We have a lot of talks and a lot of argues. We feel that he is part of our concept, part of our family. So, Captain Andrei Moisev, he's a well-qualified and experienced professional, having 20 years of experience in the maritime industry, both at sea and ashore. His sea career includes serving in top ranks up to master on oil chemical tankers. Career ashore covers a wide range of achievement, including position of lecturer and trainee in STS in St. Petersburg, Admiral Makarov State Maritime, Marine Superintendent and Head of Tanker Division in Norbalk Shipping, UK, Training, Marine and Quality Superintendent and Designated Person ashore in Bernard Sulde Ship Management, Cyprus. During this tour of duties, he has completed a number of trainings and he is well qualified and certified as marine professional. Within the last 8 years in Bernard Sulde Ship Management, he has covered various activities relating to marine operations of fleet, training of sea staff, actively involved in selection, recruitment, and professional interviews of candidates of the company fleet, officers, positioned at various levels, delivering chemical courses in MTC, participating in software for the shipshore forms exchange tools, and maintaining this project. As qualified internal auditor, he has conducted internal ISM, ISPS, ISO 9001, 14001, MLC audits, both on behalf of the vessels and ashore, auditing crew service centers. Since March 2015, he is representing BSM in the TANCO Chemical Committee and participating in various working groups. Since April 2016, he is representing BSM and in the TANCO in CDI Marine Accreditation Committee. So, Captain Andrei Moisev, you have the floor to present the speakers, and please, the speakers of the first session come to sit in the panel.
First of all, I wanted to express my thanks to Dynamarine and organizers to stand here, to be on this fantastic forum. I believe it's the only forum, Voice of Industry, related to ship-to-ship operations, and I'm really happy that this is triggered and very much driven by Dynamarine, and topics discussed here, so really do the changes related to ship-to-ship operations all around the world. So actually, I'm honored to be a chairman of this panel, most challenging panel related to statutory and frameworking. And actually, so let's have my guests start arriving. While the last one is, or the first one speaker is actually dressing up. I wanted to reintroduce one more time Dr. Stelios Pirisakis. So this very well-known person. So I'm not going to read the full bio, but I wanted to say so that Stelios is very well known, and he has a fantastic experience in marine development of the projects, survey. He's a very well qualified naval architect, and most important, and since 2007, Stelios is involved in execution of due diligence due to STS. And basically, a lot of changes in the industry we see around related to improvement of policies on new, actually, so the driven projects towards ensuring safe operation of STS. Stelios is stand behind it. So that's maybe not very well announced, but he's there. So that's, so Stelios, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. Normally, we do not wish to do presentation in this forum because the floor is for the other to talk. However, we had a last-minute cancellation, so I will deliver a very small presentation that is an introduction to the first session. So, management system of STS service providers. Okay. Management system of STS service providers. Is it good to have a management system? This is a question. Of course it is. I am sure you agree with this. Is it better to have a certified and documented management system? Yes, it is. I think we all agree on this. Okay, next questions. Does a management system cause increase in the paperwork? Does it also increase in the workload? So what is the answers to these questions? I think that many of you have answered yes. So let's see. Maybe in some cases there is a dilemma. Falsely, according to my opinion, whether a management system is practically advantageous for the company. The scope of this short presentation is to ensure that the practical value of having a management system is identified. And more specifically, I wish to reveal the practical advantages for tanker owners if the STS service provider have a management system in place. However, the issue is not to challenge the benefit of having a management system or to discuss if the existence of a certified management system is capable of guaranteeing a specific set of advantages. We all know that only its existence itself cannot guarantee anything. The big issue is what disadvantages, what faults, or what difficulties are arising by the absence of a management system. This is the big issue. Additionally, we would also like to outline the current situation worldwide and the risk that tanker operators face. Let's see what are the main conceptual characteristics that modern management systems try to bring into the organizations. One of the most important values of a modern management system is the continuous improvement cycle. This is the well-known plan, do, check, act cycle. Currently, this is by far the most efficient method to learn from our mistakes. Of course, the fact that one may have a management system in place does not ensure that he performs an effective continuous improvement cycle. However, and this is the most important point, one cannot perform continuous improvement effectively if he does not have a modern ISO-like management system in place. No management system, no continuous improvement. Another important value of a modern management system is the risk-based approach. This is a kind of extension of the continuous improvement cycle. The concept is, instead of waiting for something to happen and then improving the procedure, the concept is to identify hazards and analyze risks during the planning phase. Thus, you are able to improve procedures in a more effective way and more quickly. It is a simple, nevertheless brilliant idea. Though, again, the management system does not guarantee a successful risk analysis. However, the absence of management system ensures that there is no a consistent risk-based approach. Audits. This is also important. I do not know another entity that it is audited more rigorously than tanker owners. ISM audit, SIRE inspection, TMSA, vetting, flag, class inspections, audits. Even nuclear plants may suffer less audits and inspection than tanker owners. And the point is the following. We should accept that it is not practically feasible for tanker owners to make second-party audit to STS service provider on the spot. However, did anybody make any audit to the service provider? Just to see the basics or that ensure that there are some procedures, that they are aware of the OCMF STS guidelines, for example. Likewise, we may not have any information about the outcome of any possible audits. Nevertheless, we know for sure that audits are out of the question if there is no any management system in place. Likewise, we may not have any information about the outcome on any, Currently, thanks to MARPOL Convention and OCMF publications, there is a set of requirements, guidelines, and best practices that can assist STS service providers in building a consistent and safe system for their activities. First of all, there is a good start with MARPOL requirements for STS superintendents and the latest OCMF guidelines for STS operations. There are also self-assessment guidelines and guidelines on the assessment of competency of mooring master published by OCMF. So the basics are already in place. Maybe we also need an ISO for STS service providers, or more guidelines, or a set of selection criteria, but the basics are already here. They exist. It's worth mentioning, for example, the self-assessment guidelines, which is a TMSA version of STS service providers. This program encourages companies to assess the efficiency of their safety management system against key performance indicators. The results of the proposed self-assessment scheme can be used for internal improvement or external audits. But the self-assessment guidelines are not a management system and have value only if a management system already exists and integrates a continuous improvement cycle and a risk-based approach. Without a management system, the self-assessment techniques are void. So, the conclusion for this short analysis is that the absence of a management system implies that the continuous improvement cycle is not followed. There are no evidence for risk-based procedures. A real audit, which stands beyond a simple technical visit, is not possible. Not even an internal audit is possible. At the end of the day, the ultimate consequence of this situation is that there will be no more indication about safety and risks in order to be taken into account prior hiring such companies. Which is, in other words, means that the only factor that had been taken into account during the selection of such STS service providers was the price, the cost. No quality of services, no safety. A certified, documented, and consistent management system itself should be treated as an incentive for safety, and this is why it should always be requested as a minimum. Unfortunately, the current situation is as follows. Many charterers, also including some majors, do not have or do not allocate enough resources to audit STS service providers. Thus, many agents around the globe have the opportunity to just buy equipment, hire STS superintendents, and offer STS services. And by not investing in safety, they can offer prices that prudent STS service provider cannot compete against. This is really happening. We see this. We see in many places worldwide, while STS service providers are appearing like mushrooms, Easy money if you have the correct networking. But who is responsible for safety? Charterers? No. Tanker owners are, and this is the real problem. I do not wish to go further and mention Dynamary services in this forum, so I will end my speech here. The only thing I wish to mention is that the benefit of tanker owners is to put some minimum standards or criteria for management systems. The framework exists. It is just a decision. Management systems are the vehicle of safety. It doesn't mean that if you have a management system, you are prudent. But if you don't have one, then you can't manage risk and safety issues. It is one way. Thank you.
Thank you, Stelios. Questions? It will be later.
Is Clyde & Co then?
No, okay, so that's...
Question, we will do questions at the end of the session.
All right, of the panel, okay. So that's... Okay, then let me introduce the second speaker, our beautiful Jessica Mehta, representing Clyde & Co., very well-known company. Jessica is a partner in Clyde & Co. She is very much involved in a lot of cases representing, I believe, owners in the courts and various arbitrations. She is, moreover, so that she's a great specialist in the dealing with the charter parties, bill of ladings, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of law stuff. And also, so she's very much involved in delivering and transferring her knowledge to the industry via various courses. She's a speaker. She's a leading course auditor in academy. So what the correct ones was Lloyd's Maritime Academy. And she's also dealing with charter parties part of BIMCO e-learning courses. So I was actually myself on this kind of course. It was quite interesting and totally not practical from operational point of view. I'm not a commercial guy, thanks God. So, floor is yours, Jessica.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you to Dyna Marine and to our sponsors for giving me the opportunity to speak to you this morning. I'm following on very neatly, I think, from Stelios's talk, where he looked at the benefits of an SMS and a STS service provider having an SMS, the safety benefits to the whole STS operation. What I'm going to look at is the role that plays from a legal perspective. So when faced with an STS service provider who doesn't have an SMS, what is the position for owners and charterers in that situation? So we'll look briefly at the roles and responsibilities of the different stakeholders in the SMS operation. Stelios has really probably already explained exactly what an SMS is and how that operates. We'll touch on that, and then we'll pull that together and look at the master's role and the owner's rights and obligations vis-a-vis the STS service provider by looking at the STS transfer guide and charter party obligations and how whether or not the STS provider has an SMS fits into those aspects of the legal side of the operation. So the legal responsibility for the STS operation, charterers or cargo owners organise the STS operation and appoint the parties involved, including the STS service provider. And charterers are normally under a due diligence obligation in that respect, and we'll explore that in a little more detail as we move through the presentation. But, of course, liability for ensuring the safety of the operation rests with the masters of the vessels, and that can be a difficult balancing act for the master and the owners in the sense that the contract says one thing, but they are under this overarching duty of safety. So under the charter party, the owner's interest is, of course, in performing their obligations under the charter party. They have to provide a seaworthy and cargo-worthy ship, and they have to comply with any particular obligations that they have in the charter party as regards undertaking cargo operations by STS. they're also very much driven by their interest in the safety of the ship, the crew, the cargo, and the marine environment. As Stelios mentioned, I think in his opening welcoming remarks, of course, every stakeholder in the STS operation is driven by safety considerations. Charterers want the cargo that it's either their cargo or they have contracted with the cargo owner. They want that safely to be moved from one ship to the other ship. And they also have contractual obligations in terms of ensuring that the cargo operation takes place at a safe location, albeit that this is often watered down by a due diligence provision. And as Stelios has mentioned, and we're all aware, the charterers or the cargo owners are the party with the direct contractual relationship with the STS service provider. And there may be standards in that contract as to the level of service that will be required, whether it's industry standard or another standard that's set out in those terms. But importantly, the owners and the STS service provider have no direct contractual relationship. That's not to say that they have no legal relationship. Certainly as a matter of English law, because of the nature of the operation, there would be a duty of care between those parties so that if STS service providers equipment became damaged during the operation, or if the ship became damaged during the operation, there would be a duty of care and there might be a claim between those two parties, even though they don't have a direct contractual relationship. So in terms of an SMS, there's no legal obligation for an STS service provider to have an SMS. But Stelios talked very comprehensively about the reasons why having an SMS might assist greatly in ensuring the safety of the operation. And the points on the slide are very generic. They apply to safety management systems in all different walks of life and certainly not specific to shipping or STS in particular. But you can, if you look down the checklist, you can see immediately how a management system that deals with these sorts of matters is going to promote safety in the operation. So things like having a risk assessment, having an emergency response plan, internal audits, measurable performance metrics, and of course management buy-in and review. And I'm very disappointed that, Stelios, you had a much more snazzy colour version of this, but I also have the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle. This is from the ISO website, so I should have obviously gone to the Dynamarine website instead. But as Stelios says, this is the sort of cornerstone of a safety management system. This happens to be the ISO version, but having the management system in the first place is one thing, but putting it into practice and then monitoring performance against it and continuously improving it depending on what happens as you're applying it. So it's Plan, Do, Check, Act. And that continuous improvement element is very interesting and important and flows into the way that the STS transfer guide treats STS service providers, which again we'll look at in a moment. So talking about the guide, obviously the ship-to-ship transfer guide is the sort of Bible for ship owners when STS operations are taking place. And paragraph 1.5.1, which is up on the slide, says the master of each vessel shall always remain in command of the vessel, crew and cargo, and shall in no circumstances permit safety to be jeopardized by the actions of others. Now, you can imagine a scenario where the STS operation is taking place and somebody who is a representative or an employee of the STS service provider does something that the master is concerned about. At that point, of course, he shall in no circumstances permit that person to jeopardize the safety of the vessel. What's not as clear is whether not having an SMS, by not having an SMS, the STS service provider is in some way jeopardizing the safety of the vessel, and whether that counts as something that the master could kind of take exception to under this provision. So then we look at the charter party and say, well, what does the charter party allow the master or the owners to do if they have concerns about the safety of the operation based on the fact that there isn't this SMS in place? And that, of course, the very standard, industry standard charter party forms are shell voy and shell time, and they both treat the STS operation fairly similarly, and they're dealt with under the safe port provisions. So under clause 4, the charterers have to nominate a safe port, safe berth, safe STS location. So cargo operations are allowed via STS. And the provision says that charterers shall exercise due diligence to order the vessel to ports and berths, which includes STS locations, which are safe for the vessel, and to ensure that transshipment operations conform to standards not less than those set out in the latest edition of the STS transfer guide. So charterers have a direct obligation in relation to ensuring that the operation proceeds under the guidelines, but it is watered down by due diligence. So if a ship suffers damage during the STS operation and the owners and master are concerned that this has happened because the charterers didn't exercise due diligence in their choice of STS service provider, if damage has already occurred, then you have a legal argument and it all comes down to proof. And it's quite difficult to prove that the charterers didn't exercise due diligence, but perhaps they didn't. Perhaps they didn't do their homework properly, they didn't do the proper auditing. But at least you have an argument. What's much more difficult for the owners is taking, and the master in particular, is taking that decision in advance of the operation taking place. So saying, we're so concerned about this STS service provider that we think that the operation's going to cause unsafety, but without having the proof that actually some damage occurred, that's quite a difficult argument to run. So the master is in a really difficult position, as masters often are, because obviously he has his overriding obligation as regards safety, but the contract might not support that decision. So it might be quite difficult for him and the owners to be able to say, well, this was clearly going to be unsafe because of the choice of STS provider. So all you can do in that situation as a master and as the owners is gather as much information to support your decision to reject the STS service provider. But you could be in a situation where you're making the decision on safety grounds, but unfortunately you are still liable under the contract because the charterers can establish that they were doing what they should have been doing, because due diligence is not the highest bar. The intertanko clause, which I think is broadly similar to the BIMCO provision, it is a much more preferable situation for owners. So here you have the owners and the master have much more input into the process. They have to say that the other vessel is acceptable. They don't have the right to say whether or not the STS service provider is acceptable, although of course you have freedom of contract under English law, so you could always put that provision in if you could get that negotiated in. I haven't seen it myself, but that is an option. But the master does have the right to terminate the operation if he's concerned, and actually that right is a little bit wider than it says on the slide, because the clause says if at any stage before or during the operation, the master considers that the operation is going to be unsafe for any reason, he can refuse the operation or he can order the operation to cease. So here you're moving into territory where you would have at least an argument where you could say, right, this STS service provider doesn't have an SMS. We're very concerned that we can't monitor how safely they generally operate, and that's for any reason for the purposes of the intertanko clause, and therefore the master can say, I'm not happy to proceed on that basis. So again, there are no cases on this. It's a matter of interpretation, but under intertanko, you're moving into a position where it may be easier for the owners to progress that kind of an argument. But back to the guide, which is actually very helpful in terms of explaining the position with STS service providers. This Paragraph 2.5 expressly acknowledges that there are currently no international standards for STS service providers. And the guide is obviously, it's guidance, and it suggests that STS service providers are familiar with the guide, but it's, it doesn't put any particular obligations on them from a regulatory perspective. So it acknowledges that there aren't any international standards for STS providers, but it does say, it refers to ISO accreditation, and it says, if available, that will provide an assurance that the STS service provider has the necessary resources to provide a quality service. But it says this should not be the only determinant of quality. And it singles out performance records and previous industry experience to say that they may be important when assessing an STS service provider's ability to meet customer and regulatory requirements. Then it goes on to say, self-assessment can be used by service providers to verify that their safety management systems are comprehensive and sufficiently robust. So there's a clear inference there that the guide expects that the STS service provider will have an SMS, because it's referring to the fact that self-assessment can be used to verify the SMS. So if you then go back to the Shell Time, Shell Void Charter Party scheme, where the charterers are obliged to exercise due diligence to ensure that the STS operation complies with the guide, or standards at least as high as the guide, then you're looking at a situation where perhaps you can argue that the guide infers that the STS service provider will have an SMS, and therefore how can the charterer exercise due diligence if they select an STS service provider that doesn't have an SMS? And again, these are untested points, but these are all points which are supportive to owners and masters being able to say, well, look, why are you selecting an STS service provider that doesn't have an SMS? So I think where that gets us to is that we certainly can't say that if an STS service provider doesn't have an SMS, then the owners can, on that basis alone, refuse to accept them. But if the STS service provider does have an SMS, it means that the charterers are in a position where they're much more likely to be able to establish that they exercise due diligence to ensure that the STS operation proceeded in accordance with the guide. In every case, the impact of not having an SMS will be considered on its own facts. So you have to look at the situation that you're in. So, for example, if you have worldwide trading limits in the Charter Party, and you're talking about a jurisdiction where perhaps none of the STS service providers have an SMS, but they all have a great reputation, and they haven't had any reported accidents, then it's going to be easier for charterers to say, well, look, this was the only option. And you've also got to look in each case at the particular contract terms, the particular Charter Party terms that you're under, because they can certainly impact on the rights and obligations as regards the STS operation. There's more support in other areas in the ship-to-ship transfer guide in this regard as well. So risk assessment is obviously a very significant part of the guidance, and a very significant part of the ship owner's role in achieving safety under the guidelines. And when you look at the provisions relating to risk assessment, you can see how much easier it will be for the ship owner to comply with these and to tick those boxes if you have an STS service provider with an SMS. Because it talks about the risk assessment, including training, experience and qualifications of personnel and emergency planning procedures. The master should ensure that the procedures recommended by the guide are followed and that internationally accepted safety standards are maintained. And in the risk assessment in Appendix K, examples of causal factors for issues are things like equipment not being fit for purpose, and also inadequate contingency planning and inadequate incident management. And these are things that should be addressed by a robust and comprehensive SMS. So, in summary, an SMS an STS service provider does not have to have an SMS, and it's fairly unlikely that the master and the owners are going to be able to point to that alone to say we're not comfortable with the ship-to-ship operation. But for charterers, if they are engaging an STS service provider who has an SMS, it should be much easier for them to be able to say, well, look, we've exercised due diligence, we've complied with our charter party obligation, and we've exercised due diligence to ensure that the STS transfer operation proceeds in accordance with the guide. And that's really the safety element that everybody's trying to achieve. So just before I finish, if a master were to refuse to agree to an STS service provider who had been nominated by the charterers, then, as I say, that might be a safety decision that the master takes, but what might be the consequences under the charter party? And there's a case that you may well be aware of a couple of years ago called the Falconera, which involved the master of a VLCC refusing to undertake an STS operation to another VLCC. And there were various delays and additional costs incurred because it ended up that the STS operation had to be done to a number of smaller ships. And obviously that involved a time delay and additional cost delay. And the English High Court and then the Court of Appeal held that that was an unreasonable position that the owner and the master had taken, because basically what they were saying was that the master wouldn't undertake the operation to another VLCC because he'd experienced problems doing that operation VLCC to VLCC previously. But the court said, well, you're not looking at the particular vessel, you're saying, well, we rule out this class of vessels and that's unreasonable, particularly when you consider how many VLCC to VLCC operations proceed safely. So you could draw an analogy there with the situation if the master had decided that they weren't comfortable with the STS service provider and therefore refused to go ahead with the operation on the basis that the STS service provider didn't have an SMS. That might not be supported by the owner's rights in the charter party, and so what the owners would then be looking at is a claim for delay and additional costs, but that has to be balanced against, of course, the master's decisions on the safety of the vessel. So that's all I was going to say. Happy to answer questions afterwards.
Jessica, thank you for your speech. Okay, so we have the last, not least, speaker in our panel, Captain Gordon Grisi, another regular speaker on these forums. Captain Grisi is acting active mooring master, and plus he's a marine consultant in QK Marine. He's very much involved in auditing ships, marine operations, STS operations. He's active site inspector, am I correct? Yes? So,
CMI.
Yes.
CMID.
So plus he's involved in many developments of various training programs, and he's playing a very active role in a specific region in Mediterranean, I would say.
Yeah.
So Captain Gordon, floor is yours.
Thank you. Good day to you. First of all, before I start, I would like to thank Dyna Marine and Tsakos and Captain Yanis Fragos for the privilege that I have in contributing to try and make STS operations safer. I've titled this presentation Right First Time, which is a concept that originated long time ago, originally in the production industry, but then it evolved into, okay. Can I have the presenter view here? No, okay. Sorry. It originated in the production industry, and then the concept evolved into service. And I want you to think of it as if it is a play by actors on a stage of some famous theater with a distinguished audience, just like as yourselves. So the play has to be done right first time, but before doing it right first time, there would have been a lot of rehearsals, a lot of training, a lot of failures to eventually come out with a product that will be right when we are going to perform it. One tool that we use to have safer operations in whatever we do in shipping is the ISM. And the ISM was coined to not only say what we do, but we do what we say and we show that we are doing what we are saying. But anyone who have been involved in completing checklists will know that you can tick right down on the checklist without actually doing anything that is on the checklist. So those are things that can happen, and anybody involved in checklists would know that, and anybody involved in auditing will know that records alone wouldn't show that you are actually capable and that you are actually doing what you are stating that you are doing on the checklist itself. So our relationship with doing operations and with working needs to be given life, needs to breathe and needs to have a heartbeat. Because if we don't feel what we are doing, if we stay remotely and assess operations only by paperwork, then we can be misled. So in preparing our crews, in preparing our chief officers to become masters, we are assessing them, we are putting them on simulator, we are giving them exercises, we are doing training. But then when it comes to contracted work, we are staying at a distance. We may just contract work, as we were saying, the speakers before me, maybe on the basis of price only, and not on the basis of feeling, of knowing the subcontractor, the service provider. So it is like going into a pharmacy and asking for the medicine to provide me with the medicine for to give me a solution, but without having a relationship with the pharmacist himself or herself. So we need to have this relationship. We need to know our participants in the operation. Not to do policing, not to sort of be there to criticize or to issue warnings, but to make sure that the operations can be done supporting our efforts, supporting our performance. So we have to put ourselves into the shoes also of our people. We have said, the speakers before me have highlighted that the masters are responsible for the safety of operation, but have they been prepared for that particular operation? Can they actually identify that something is critical, that something can go wrong? Have they been trained to do that? There is a lot of responsibility on the masters, but can you imagine a master that will have, for example, no experience in night operations, in doing STS operations, and he is being asked whether to accept to do the operation or not? What are the differences between night operations and daylight operations? How can he identify, or how is he supported to identify gaps that might exist in the dynamics of that operation? We all know that time will mean money, that if there's any delays, they will be costly. But if there is a decision taken in the interest of safety, which might result in a delay, isn't the benefits of that safety decision for all participants? It is not only for the ship that is going to be beneficial, it is going to be beneficial to the charters if it is taken purely for the interest of safety. But we have to make sure that the people taking that decision have been trained, have been equipped, have been mentored to take that decision in the interest of safety. Rather than stopping at auditing or at a paper exercise, we need to understand better the performance capability of all the participants, of all the stakeholders, whether they are the STS service providers or our crews. A few weeks ago, I was doing an STS operation and there was a vetting going on as well. And in some time during the vetting, I was discussing with the vetting inspector, and I was saying I have explained how I am going to conduct the approach, but I wouldn't be sure if anybody in the bridge team will actually point out something that is doubtful. If I have explained how I'm going to conduct the approach, I expect people to compare what I'm doing with what I have explained. So if they see something different, they point it out. But I'm not sure if they are actually trained or if they have the confidence to challenge me. I want them to challenge me, that's why I am explaining it. But if they have not been trained, they wouldn't feel confident to challenge me. So we have to analyze not only there is no requirement for ship's crews to be trained in STS operations. The mooring master will come on board and he will provide the bridge team with the necessary knowledge. But he is there to support the bridge team and the bridge team is there to support him. So one of the exercises we're doing at Tsakos on their excellent simulator can be repeated also with crews, with masters, with officers, with members of the bridge team, so that they can understand the critical aspects, the critical points of an STS operation, so that they can feel more confident and they can feel able to challenge things, not to create a conflict, but to be able to see if something is going wrong or if it can go wrong. And that way we'll be ensuring that safety is not a priority. Safety is not first. Because if it is first, it can come second, third, according to our priorities. Safety has to be there as a value. Safety has to be there always. In whatever we do, safety has to be there. So we need to equip our people to be able to uphold the value of safety. In doing assessments on simulator, and later on we will be discussing simulators, we will need to make sure that the rules of the game, the concept in which people are being trained, they are clear. Because otherwise there can be what we can call simulator bias. People not used to simulators may feel different. It is good on simulators that you can abuse the simulator. Last session I have destroyed about 4 ships, I think, approximately. Yeah, so on simulators you can abuse the simulator, but obviously you don't want to take that into real life. It is something we are seeing with games. People can do different things on games and they try to do them in real life. It's something that you cannot do this at home. So we have to be careful with that. Also, we have to, in assessing service providers, Stelios was saying they are coming up as mushrooms. Yes, we have to see also their capability in covering the industry, their presence worldwide, or in their particular region, to see if they are one mushroom or if they are a farm, to see what they can do. This is one message forwarded to me by a colleague, which shows that the safety management system of a service provider is being used as a paper chase exercise. The joint plan of operations is being requested a week after completion of the operation. And it is being requested purely for auditing purposes. And to add salt to the wound, there's a lot of indemnity being asked for as well. So these are things that will highlight for us performing in the industry that not all that is on paperwork is real. Not all that is on paperwork is honest. Risk assessment was also mentioned by the speakers prior to me, and it is one aspect that we can benefit a lot from the use of simulators. I have been working as a mooring master for the last 7 years. Tsakos have been doing, I don't know how many operations safely every year. 150, all safely done. Very good. It also means, but including myself, which have done 7 years of operations safely, that my experience in things going wrong is 0. So when things start going wrong, I am in a different world. So I will have to try and do things that are wrong, that are extremes, on simulators. That is the only place I can gain experience in doing things that I can hope and try not to experience in real life. So we have tested any kind of failure that we could imagine. Rudders, engines, mooring lines, everything failing. It was an apocalypse. And we try to do this because that is the only way we can gain experience in things going wrong. But should it be only the mooring master doing the training? Or should it be also the master or senior officers in the bridge team that will have to undergo that training? It is not required by STCW, it is not required by the SMS perhaps, but it is something that we can put into our crews, into our bridge team, so that they can be more confident, more prepared. This is a work instruction in my work as marine representative, which is the opposite of a paper chase exercise. This is a charterer that is being diligent in what is being done. Here, the instruction was to go to an STS operation that has been planned at a location which is sheltered and there is all the right procedures in place. So it is not a high-risk operation, but the charterer wanted somebody on board as a marine representative to oversee the operation, not to be in charge of the operation, to oversee that the conduct of the operation is being done as required. And if there is something that is raising doubt, he is to point it out. So this was done in the absence or because the bridge team was not trained in STS operations. So the bridge team couldn't challenge the conduct of the operation. So the charterer wanted that somebody is there to make sure that the operation is being done properly. It is like when we used to have on the mooring station, there is a senior officer. He's not doing the mooring himself, he's not operating the winch, he's not coiling the rope, but he is overseeing that the mooring operation is being done safely. And that is an instruction, an example that in the industry, people that want to do things right, they do exist. They are there. So in enhancing decision-making skills of our bridge team, we have to put into this training, we have to see that our people have the confidence, have the knowledge to understand operations and have gone through the understanding of the risk assessments that they have, so that they know that how they can apply the mitigation measures that have been put in place. In this message that was given to me by a service provider, which was sent to me by a service provider, we had established limits for STS operations, environmental limits, which we have also tested on the simulator, and I have been testing these for quite a few years now. And after some time, I received this message saying that this particular service provider was not selected on the basis that our limits were somehow lower than other limits. Fine, it's fine with me, no problem with that. But there are many hidden messages in this short sentence, and I would like to point out two. One which is, I would say, shallow, and the other is deep. In here, it is like telling me that all I have to do to get a contract is increase my limits. So it is like some form of subtle commercial pressure, increase your limits, and we give you work. The deeper message I gain from this is, where is the evaluation of the risk assessment? In order to increase limits or in order to establish limits, I need to perform a risk assessment. I need to see what is going to happen if environmental limits are increased. And this we have proved that it can be tested on the simulator, and we can see when mooring lines start breaking. So are my limits at the point when mooring lines start breaking, or before that, to be able to unmoor the ships before mooring lines start breaking? So these are questions that will only be answered by properly done risk assessments. And today, nowadays, we have the tools, we have simulators. We can do this more diligently, more effectively. So to conclude, I would say that we have to look at STS operations like a safety pentagon, like a house, like any building where the foundations need to be strong. The foundations of whatever we build need to be enough, need to be strong enough to support the structure. So at the base, we need to have very good planning. We have to take into consideration all aspects that we are going to anticipate in our operations. The building blocks will be the vessel itself, her machinery, her handling capabilities. If they are reliable, if they are adequate for the operation. And then, to close it off, we need to know the mooring capability of the vessels, because not all vessels are designed with a mooring arrangement ideal for STS operations, so there could be weaknesses in that, and the environmental conditions that will be suitable for those particular ships. I have deliberately left out the presence of explicit humans in it, because the human element is involved in all of them. And when we have an accident and we identify humans in it, it doesn't stop there. We need to go into the root cause of why the human has taken the decision that has contributed to something. But in this case here, we can see the 5 elements, I would say, that will contribute to STS operations, and any negative aspect in them will contribute to a negative performance. Thank you very much. That's all I had to say. Take questions.
Thank you, Captain Gordon. Okay, thanks one more time for all our speakers. Actually, to summarizing, so that's all these presentations, as I understood, being active listener, that you have highlighting the problem we have in the industry. So we are very well regulating vessels. We have contractual obligations, we have master overriding authority, master responsibility everywhere. We have certain obligations on SMS for ships operators and or ships owners to have everything. And at the same time, so the commercial driven machine, which is actually so this driving and moving everything around, is charters, and their left or right hand, so that's STS providers, who has no any contractual, basically, obligations except due diligence, which is can be interpreted in many various things. So can you share, so that's Stelios, so that you do some STS providers audits, correct?
Yes,
Am I
that's correct.
Okay. So this, did you audit anyone who doesn't have SMS?
Well, the problem is that if there is not an SMS, the audit is very limited. So you just see the CVs, the experience, the equipment. You can also be witnessing an STS operation as well. However, you don't know if the next operation will be like the previous one you have witnessing. So this is the problem we faced. And this is why we have all this dilemma about SMS. So you can audit, but it is like a snapshot, and you cannot foresee the future after the audit.
Okay. So I also very much like one of the first slides of Captain Gordon. So that's say what you do what you say. So that's, I believe, so that we are very much limiting in industry, especially in this particular with STS providers. So that's, we have clearly saying something, so that there is a formal SMS, and there is evidence of execution, which is related to the checklists, as correctly mentioned, tick box exercising. So the gap is doing something. As industry, so that's maritime industry in general. So I believe so we are very much, how to say, reflective. So all major changes in industry is related based on serious incidents. So I do very much appreciate so that's your input today. So this pointing and saying, we definitely had a gap. So, and this gap, so that's especially for legal obligations of charters who has a huge power so towards forcing any operations, and this gap is not filled. So until, I believe, something would happen seriously and massively, then I hope it wouldn't ever happen, but we had a great possibility for that one. So, and that's only because of, let's say, due diligence by players, major players in the industry, so we are managing to avoid it so far. What do you think? So what are our chances, and which of, how to say, bodies can help us so this to execute, put some obligations towards the charters? Jessica?
Well, I mean, from a contractual perspective, we would be free to do that. So the owners would be free to do that. They're free to contract on the Intertanko clause or the BIMCO clause and give themselves more rights. The difficulty is whether or not you're going to get charterers to accept that.
Yes.
And from a legal perspective, you know, that's at the moment, that's really owners only recourse. And unfortunately, of course, we're mainly on shell time and shell voy, which favour the charterers. So I think it's difficult in terms of, you know, any bodies that would also get involved in this kind of fight. I don't know whether that's anything that you've looked at, Stelios, in terms of how we put pressure on the charterers to insist that their STS service providers have an SMS.
Yes, the first thing you can do is to ensure that he is aware of. Because most of the times we see that, okay, if I say this, then they do nothing. But it is very important to ensure that they are aware. Because if they are aware, then they have to do something. So I think that this is the first thing that we have to do. And if we do this every time, then at a certain point, they will do something. I think also that legally is a very uncomfortable situation to know and doing nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not comfortable for the owners to be in this situation and have no sort of direct relationship with the STS service providers. So the pressure has to be on the charterers to bridge that gap. But of course, in a contracting situation, it depends on the bargaining power of the parties and whether the owners are able to turn around to the charterers and say, we insist that you demand this of your STS service provider. That's market-driven, ultimately.
Do you consider so that it can be addressed to industry, let's say through the various channels, let's say Intertanko, ICMF, CDI, or any other so that's industry, let's say non-governmental organizations, which in fact are drivers of the industry. So that's okay. In IMO, they're sitting very behind, but they're basically, so that's all decisions and all input is coming from NGOs. So shall we try to work on it? I mean, so that's
Yes.
to put at least industry requirements, because ACMF is recommended, it's guideline, so that's we are not obliged to follow, but you cannot get any jobs if you are not following. So shall we work on it?
We have seen that until now, we are almost from 2011, and we have pointed out some specific consideration in ship-to-ship, and we see every year that these considerations are taken into account every year more and more. And if it is very difficult to change things at once. Because, okay, commercial is not number one. We cannot say that commercial is number one priority, but we have to accept that commercial is the vehicle of doing the job. So if there is not the commercial, then it is not a question of if we do this. We don't do it. So we have to continue try to work. This is what we believe. We have to try to make things continue. However, we have to say what is the problems and try every time to make it better and better. And because if we have time to respond, then most of the times the solution are not so costly that prevent the performance of the operation.
Okay, thank you, James. Any other questions from the audience? Okay, we have something here. Okay, question. Does the technical operator have the right to request the written approval or audit findings for the specific STS service provider? Who will volunteer to answer it? Jessica, maybe you?
No, I don't think so. Not as a matter of...
Just pure goodwill of...
Yeah, I think it would. That's right. Unless it's written into the Charter Party, I don't think you would have any particular right to do that. I guess if you ask for it, and also there might be confidentiality considerations and other data protection considerations. I guess if you, I'm assuming this means one that's been commissioned by the charterers. I guess if you ask for it and you don't get a very good explanation of why you can't have it, or you don't get extracts from it, or at least a summary of what it says, that would ring alarm bells. So there's certainly no harm in having that discussion, but I'm not sure that you would have the right to see it.
Okay. The next one is from George Nicolau. Thank you. If an STS provider doesn't have an SMS, can we ask charterers in what way they execute their due diligence according to the charter party?
You wouldn't know that.
You can certainly ask.
But you wouldn't know that they don't have an SMS. You wouldn't know that the service provider doesn't have an SMS. So I would like to see eventually that like tankers are chartered on the basis of their successful completion of vetting, probably. Yeah? So I would like to see eventually that service providers are also approved by the industry. I don't need IMO or anybody. I like the fact that the industry tries to regulate itself through guidance and through best practices. So I would like that at some stage we move to a position where we have approved service providers, approved by the industry, and then the charters can select whoever they want, provided they are on that list.
So basically vetting inspection for the STS providers. Sort of,
and I don't need to know the answers. I need to have them approved or not approved. If they are there, we can select them. If they are not there, we cannot select them.
I believe it's a good idea. So that's, and definitely has a value.
And I would just say that when you're notified as an owner of who the STS provider is going to be, you can certainly ask the charterers, have you asked them if they have an SMS, which I think is your point.
And if they've been audited, yeah?
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
So all right, okay. How can a charterers justify support the selection of an STS service provider with no SMS at the location where there are other services providers with an SMS? Oof. I believe it's a question to charterers. on my personal opinion. So
It might be difficult for them to do that legally, but it depends, this is a lawyer's answer, it depends on exactly the circumstances, because if the service provider who doesn't have the SMS has a good track record, has a good reputation, you know, that they might be able to justify it. But it feeds into what I was saying in my talk about you're building a picture and you're trying to make it more difficult for charterers to be able to establish that they've exercised due diligence. And if they've chosen an an STS service provider without an SMS when there were others on offer who had one, it's going to be more difficult if anything happens for them to be able to establish that they exercise due diligence.
at the same time, I believe so this can be STS provider without SMS performing more safe
Yes,
than...
exactly.
Because
Well, you made that point that it's not a guarantee of safety just because you have an SMS. It's all about what that says and how you...
I had a case
operate
when I had some arguments with one of STS provider regarding POAC qualification, and I've been denying to provide this information, to be provided with that information based on GDPR, whenever. And so I said, listen, guys, so this will have massive chain of correspondence between manager of this STS provider, myself, so we're trying to get, okay, finally we came to conclusion. And I've been assured that they are very well reputable, so they have a perfect SMS, robust procedures, and the highest standard of selection and recruitment. And ended up so that I get a series of POACs, and I saw that one of the POAC submitted so that he doesn't have a cargo handling certification. And on my question, excuse me, why? So you see, so it's very difficult in this particular location if you are not sailing, the administration of this particular nationality doesn't provide a cargo-specific document. I says, then he cannot be a POAC. He can be a perfect mooring master. He has a great experience. He has a very good records of STS separation, but definitely so he is not a POAC. So that's because advisory control of cargo, mooring and cargo operations. That's clear. And the guys ended up to agree, so they sent two guys, actually, so to cover cargo operations. Yeah, it is a case, but it's definitely, so it's very much depends on kind of...
You also need to have a risk assessment for a particular location.
Yes.
So
Yes,
apart
because
from the
experience,
SMS, you need to have a risk assessment for the location of the STS.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, Mr. George Nicolaou again. So that's, there are norms or rules which define charterers' due diligence obligation. Is this process transparent?
The definition of due diligence in a shipping context, because we come across this, of course, in cargo claims where under the Hague-Visby rules, where the ship owner has to exercise due diligence to provide a seaworthy and cargo-worthy ship. So it's a very kind of key concept of English marine law, and essentially, to exercise due diligence, you have to do what a prudent charterer would do in the same situation. So does that sound legally woolly enough? You know, so basically it's a question of fact. So you have to look at everything that goes on in the industry and say, you know, take a charterer who, take a major or somebody who you would consider to be a prudent charterer and say, what would they do? And has this charterer exercised the same level of diligence? So no, there's not like... I mean, there's no one case that would deal with this, and there's no one standard. You just have to look at what a prudent charterer would do in the same situation.
Okay, and we had one more question. According to MARPOL requirements, the POAC should have attendance at a suitable ships handling course. What is the significance behind IMO inclusion? Can you specify, please, so that's a little bit not very clear, so that's the second part of the question. Who sent the question?
I presume that they mean that what is the relation between a simulator and the handling course? You know, does a handling course means a simulator, or it could be something else?
Okay. I believe so. That's okay. So that's there is, as far as I know. Okay, guys, I'm not expert in.
I think the gray area in training is what makes a ship handling course suitable. That is the gray area that there is in the guideline at the moment. So what are you going to do in the ship handling training? Are you going to do easy operations, good weather? Are you just going to do the approach? Are you going to try to keep the ships together during the operation, which is, I find, the most challenging part, rather than the approach itself? So the guidelines do not define what makes a ship handling course suitable.
But technically, so that's okay. So that's for all our masters and senior officers. So we have a mandatory ships handling courses. It's basically, moreover, it's included now into the part of the license to have a ships handling course. So where the guys is basically, yeah, it is a simulation. There is a model course, IMO model course.
But not for STSs, no?
Of course, it's not for STS, but it doesn't specify that.
Exactly.
So in Marpolis clearly says so that he has to have POSE should have ships handling course, which is basically similar to the ships handling formal ships handling IMO course our masters, let's say, have. So to me. Okay, there is no specific STS ships handling course. Definitely, there is no IMO model course for that one, and probably it should be. So that's. But at the moment, I believe nothing regulated by IMO in this particular respect. Did we answer the question? Anything else, gents and ladies? Okay, so. One more time, so thank you very much for your valuable questions. I wish to say great thanks again to our fantastic speakers today. So that's perfect, very interesting presentations, very much appreciated. And thank you very much.